For many Minnesota farmers, federal subsidies will be critical this year and may keep them from actually going out of business.
But those who will really make out are the bigger farming operations. Tom Lydon of the Fox 9 Investigators is here with a look at the complicated and controversial issue of farm subsidies. Tom.
Sure is. Minnesota ranks 4th in the nation when it comes to farm subsidies. Only Texas, Iowa, and Illinois collect more. Those subsidies increasingly benefit bigger and wealthier farm operations. And many times the checks are going to people who don't even live or work on a farm.
In the unpredictable world of farming, farm subsidies are the closest thing to a sure thing. And this year, in the shadow of a trade war, the harvest of federal dollars will be like nothing we've seen before.
Whirling dust stings the nostrils of man and beast.
Federal farm subsidies have been around since the Dust Bowl of the 1930s.
Women and children fight their way through blinding dust.
Today, there's a dozen different types of farm subsidies designed to get farmers through the good times and the bad. The largest by far is crop insurance, but there's also disaster aid and commodity programs. The newest subsidy, and the one the Fox 9 investigators are focused on, is the Market Facilitation Program, or MFP, designed to help farmers hit hard by the trade war with China. According to figures just released by the USDA, in the last 3 months alone, Minnesota farmers have received $508 million in payments, bringing the grand total since last year to nearly $1.2 billion. The 10 biggest recipients were also some of the biggest farm operations in Minnesota.
Farm subsidies really go to the wealthiest farmers and the largest farms.
Anna Weir-Scheckinger is a senior economic analyst for the Environmental Working Group, a public policy nonprofit that's been analyzing farm subsidies for 20 years.
The small farmers who really need farm subsidies, especially during this trade war from the Trump administration, these small farms aren't the ones receiving most of the money.
In fact, last year, the top 10% of recipients in MFP got nearly half the money. That's because farm subsidies are almost always based on acres, making it less about farming and more about how much land someone owns.
Why isn't there some kind of needs assessment for these farm subsidies? Like Joe Farmer really needs this subsidy. Frank Farmer doesn't. Why isn't there some kind of needs assessment?
So there never really has been much of a needs assessment. It goes way back to when farm subsidies were first created. There wasn't really a needs assessment because the thinking back at that time was that every farmer needs some help.
Even farmers who live in Edina, where there are no farms. And the money trail led us to the CFO of Faribault Woolen Mill, who told us he handles the finances for a family farm and the money goes right back into the operation. It took us to the top of the IDS building and a post office box for a trucking company.
He's looking for the company. Good luck.
Which we were able to trace to a farm near Rochester.
How many acres you got here?
I think the total is over 2,000.
Oh my.
And we followed the money trail to a private golf club in Blaine, where we met Gary Renicky, who runs a land trust for his daughters.
I don't need the money and I don't take the money. My daughters do.
The farm in Illinois, he says, belongs to his late wife. They rent the land to other farmers but share in the expenses and consult about the crop.
And if it wasn't for the Market Facilitation Program, what would happen?
Well, we would probably lose money. And if we lost money too many years in a row, we'd have to sell to a big corporation. We would not have family farms.
But farm subsidies actually benefit land owners more than farmers, driving up land prices and rents. Today, more than half the cropland in the U.S. is rented, and an absent landlord can live anywhere.
So that's a really common theme. People living in very affluent areas that are getting payments for farm subsidies when they don't live anywhere near a farm.
All of this is perfectly legal, and it got even more lucrative with last year's farm bill, which allows not just spouses and children of farmers to collect subsidies, but cousins, nieces, and nephews, up to $250,000 each, as long as they're actively engaged in farming and don't make more than $900,000 a year.
What's actively engaged?
So the definition of actively engaged in farming is very vague. So you can call into a shareholder meeting every now and then, a few times a year, or do things like have some small financial risk in the farm in order to receive payments. So you don't have to ever set foot on a farm to receive these payments.
Far from any farm, we found ourselves in an upscale Edina business park, looking for something called Apache JV, that since last year has collected nearly $250,000 under the MFP program. There was no Apache on the 7th floor, but there was a Geronimo Energy, a wind turbine company.
She is in a meeting, so she's not able to meet with you.
The answer, come to find out, may be blowing in the wind. Those farm subsidies track back to here, in Cottonwood County, about 2 hours southwest of the Twin Cities, and a Geronimo Energy project behind me, known as the Odell Wind Farm. These wind turbines tower over thousands of acres of soybean fields. According to property tax records, the chairman of Geronimo, Noel Ron, and his family own about 2,000 acres of farmland in Cottonwood County. And Noel Ron is no stranger to farm subsidies. Over the years, he has personally collected nearly $1.5 million. Ron, who runs a family investment business, also lives in Edina in a home worth $1.3 million.
I've been trying to reach him, and people at Geronimo Energy won't return my phone call. So Noel Ron wasn't here, but I left a message with the maid. We'll see if he calls me back.
He never did. It's no surprise that city folks may be part of a family farm through investments, trusts, or other financial arrangements. But advocates say farm subsidies should go to people who are taking the risk, who are actually farming, with some skin in the game, some dirt underneath their fingernails. They say it's a $20 billion system with so little oversight and so many loopholes, we've lost sight of who it was originally for.
Between the market facilitation program, crop insurance, and disaster aid, Minnesota may end up receiving more than $2 billion in farm subsidies this year. That would be a record, twice as much as a normal year. There is always talk of reforming the system. There are so many loopholes, but it remains mostly talk. Speaking of which, we want to talk to Minnesota Congressman Collin Peterson, who chairs the House Ag Committee and after 30 years in Congress knows the ins and outs of farm subsidies better than anyone. But his office did not respond to our repeated requests for an interview. To be fair, he was also avoiding reporters because of impeachment questions. So he had multiple reasons, perhaps.
But it's hard when people won't talk to me. To get
Hard
answers.
also when our congressman, who knows so much about farm subsidies, will not.
You're absolutely right. Nobody knows more about that in the state than him.
All right.